Prior to my assignment at St. Basil the Great, which has been almost 19 years ago now, I was at the time serving in Catholic Charities, and I lived in Cleveland on East 80th Street. Actually, I was on 80th Street. The church faced the 81st Street at St. Lawrence Church. And the church that I grew up in Elyria we had traditions, we had customs, but it really wasn't a nationality parish where you would have very specific customs that people brought with them from Europe. So I really learned a great deal at St. Lawrence about Slovenian customs. And one of those customs had to do with this feast that we celebrate today, Corpus Christi. For about 2 weeks prior to today, the celebration of Corpus Christi, the people would really clean up their yards. They would literally clean up the streets. They would paint all of the curbs in about a 12 or 10 square block radius around the parish. And then they would also paint all the bottoms of the trees, about 6 feet up on the trees, paint them down to the ground. Telephone poles, signposts, everything. The neighborhood was really spiffed up for the Feast of Corpus Christi. And that's just something that I wasn't at all familiar with. And then right before the day, the week before Corpus Christi, this Sunday, the city would come through those streets and they would clean all of the streets. So the place was really just absolutely stunning. And I was really very much touched by this. On the Feast of Corpus Christi, we would celebrate Mass at noon in church, and then we would take the Blessed Sacrament with us and travel through the neighborhood in the monstrance, and we would stop at various sites in the neighborhood and offer prayers to the Eucharist, and then we would continue on our journey. So we must have had 4 or 5 stops going through these 10 or more square blocks of the neighborhood, say some prayers. We said the rosary as we traveled the route, and then we would return to church and we would have benediction and blessing of the people who had been, and the whole parish would go in the procession. What was fascinating to me about this was a changing neighborhood at the time, and yet many, many people would come outside their homes just to witness the procession, and certainly all the Catholics were out there witnessing the procession. But it was a beautiful testimony to Jesus in the Eucharist that we were celebrating and honoring on Corpus Christi. And I just thought it was an absolutely wonderful, wonderful custom, and certainly a wonderful way to appreciate the gift of Jesus in the Eucharist. And again, that's the feast, the body and blood of Christ, that we celebrate today. And one final thought on the Eucharist. We know that when we receive the Eucharist, we become what we receive. We become Jesus in receiving him in the Eucharist.